Imagine your friends recording you like this in high school thinking it's just a silly video, when in reality, they were plotting to murder you. Every once in a while, I'm reminded of what happened to Cassie Jo Stoddart and how she was pet sitting at her aunt's house while she went out of town for the weekend. How her two friends and classmates would later break into said house and stab her 30 times, and then after, record themselves bragging about it.
Just killed Cassie. We just left her house. This is not a fucking joke.
I'm shaking.
I stabbed her in the throat and I saw her lifeless body just disappear. Dude, I just killed Cassie.
This is the disturbing murder of Cassie Jo Stoddart, and I promise you, it's a story that you'll remember when you're home alone one night and the lights start to flicker. This is Cassie Jo Stoddart. She was only 16 years old when she was brutally murdered in 2006. Cassie lived in Pocatello, Idaho, and when she was in 11th grade, she became friends with these two guys, Brian Lee Draper and Tori Adamczyk, who were also 16. Brian and Tori were outcasts, and they were bullied growing up, so they never felt like they fit in. When they met each other at Pocatello High School, they instantly clicked, and they bonded over their love for horror movies, specifically the movie Scream. In the months leading up to Cassie's murder, they confided in each other about their dream to kill someone, or rather multiple people, and it didn't take long for them to begin planning. Brian and Tori loved to make documentary-style videos and short films together and would often film at school. They started getting close with Cassie and would film her too, just like in this video. Everyone thought that Brian and Tori were just making harmless videos, but in reality, they were documenting their path to becoming serial killers. In one video, they talked about how much they respected the Columbine shooters, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, and wanted to plan something similar. The boys also raved about how they wanted to be just like Billy and Stu from Scream and carry out a series of murders just like they did. I mean, they were really disturbed. After putting together what they called a death list, Brian and Tori settled on their first victim, their good friend, Cassie. And on September 22nd, 2008, they carried out their gruesome plan. That evening, Cassie was house-sitting for her aunt and uncle at their house on Whispering Cliffs Drive in Bannock County. Cassie agreed to watch their dogs for them as they went on a little weekend getaway. This was something that Cassie had done plenty of times before, so it wasn't new, which made this an eerie scene. To keep her company, Cassie's boyfriend Matt came over that night at around 6 p.m., and a short while later, their friends Brian and Tori also showed up to hang out. Once they were all there, Cassie gave them a tour of this big house, including the basement. Then they all gathered in the living room and started watching Kill Bill, but before it was over, Brian and Tori said that they were actually going to leave so that they could go to the movie theater and watch a movie there instead. Little did anyone know, though, that right before they left, Brian and Tori unlocked the basement door so that they could sneak back in later completely undetected. A little while after leaving, the boys came back to the neighborhood, parked down the street, and put on these really creepy costumes, which consisted of dark clothes, gloves, and these white painted masks. Then they quietly re-entered the house through the basement door. At this point, Cassie and Matt were still in the living room watching movies, so once the boys were in the basement, they put together this plan to try and lure them downstairs. They intentionally made a lot of noise to also try and scare them, but when Cassie and Matt still didn't budge, they went a different route. The boys then found the breaker and cut all of the power to the house, again trying to get the couple to come downstairs. When they still didn't bother to go into the basement, Brian and Tori turned some of the lights back on. At this point, Cassie started to get a little bit freaked out because not only were the lights continuously going out, her aunt's dogs were also just staring down the basement stairs. They kept barking and growling as if someone was down there, which unbeknownst to anyone at this point, but there was someone down there. So realizing how scared Cassie was all alone in this big secluded house, Matt called his mom and asked her if he could stay the night with Cassie. But of course, being 16 and not expecting anything bad to happen, she said no. But she did offer for Cassie to come and stay the night with them at their house, and then Matt's mom could just take her back to her aunt's house early the next morning. But Cassie was super responsible, and she felt like it was her responsibility to stay with the animals since that's what she was hired to do. So at around 10:30 p.m., Matt's mom came to pick him up. He said his goodbyes and walked out the front door, and sadly, this would be the last time that he would ever see Cassie alive. After leaving, Matt actually called Brian and Tori to see where they were to possibly meet up and hang out, but he said that they were acting really weird on the phone and were super quiet. He didn't think much of it at the time because he thought they were just at the movie theater like they said they were, but in reality, they were actually in the basement that entire time, just waiting to kill Cassie. So Tori and Brian heard Matt leave the house, and once again, they cut the power trying to lure Cassie into the basement, but it didn't work. Eventually, they came upstairs, armed with their huge hunting knives. There they found Cassie laying on the couch, and then they attacked her, stabbing her 30 times. 12 of those stab wounds were fatal, so this was major overkill. When Cassie was dead, they left the house and immediately recorded this video.
Just killed Cassie. We just left her house. This is not a fucking joke.
I'm shaking.
I stabbed her in the throat and I saw her lifeless body just disappear. Dude, I just killed Cassie.
Cassie's body was found 2 days later when her aunt and uncle returned home from their trip, and as you can imagine, this was a really bloody and gruesome scene. Needless to say, police were quickly called, and when they examined the home, one thing immediately stood out to them. Authorities found a set of fingerprints on the circuit breaker door in the basement that actually belonged to Cassie's mom's boyfriend, so he became suspect number 1, but he was quickly ruled out as just a few months prior he had done some electrical work on the house, and this was backed up by Cassie's aunt and uncle, so he was ruled out. The next suspect was an obvious one, Cassie's boyfriend, Matt. I mean, he was the last person to ever see her live, so police figured he would be a great place to start. Matt told police about how all of those weird things kept happening at the house that night, like the lights going out and the dogs barking and growling like someone was in the basement. He said he was spooked too, not just Cassie. But Matt was quickly cleared too, for a few reasons. One being that when his mom picked him up that night, she heard Cassie's voice coming out of the front door. So at this point, she could confirm that she was still alive as her son was leaving the house. That and having a strong alibi and passing a polygraph test, so he was ruled out too. But he did mention that 2 other friends were at the house the night Cassie died and to maybe look into them, so authorities did. They tracked down Brian and Tori and interviewed them, which at first they denied knowing anything about Cassie's murder. Their story was that they left Cassie's house to go to the movie theater and that they watched the movie Pulse. But oddly enough, they couldn't recount any details at all from that movie, which was the first red flag. After a while, Brian ended up confessing to the entire thing, but he really downplayed his role in the situation. Brian and Tori pretty much just blamed each other, but then he changed his story and said that he did end up stabbing her, but only because Tori made him to make sure she was dead. The boys then led police to an area in Black Rock Canyon where they partially burnt and buried their costumes, masks, and knives that they used in Cassie's murder. But that's not all police found. They also found a partially burned VHS tape which they were able to restore, and on it were both Tori and Brian, fully planning, plotting, and confessing/bragging about killing Cassie.
We found our victim, and sad as it may be, she's our friend. But you know what? We all have to make sacrifices. Our first victim is going to be Cassie, Stoddart, and her friends.
Turn your brights off,
Well,
asshole.
yeah, we'll find out if she has friends over. She's going to be alone in a big, dark house out in the middle of nowhere.
So that pretty much went against everything that Brian told police. He said he only stabbed Cassie because Tori made him, when in reality, he was bragging and excited about having stabbed her in the throat. Police then found so many other videos that the boys made together, planning the murder of so many other people, not just Cassie.
Story, September 22nd, 2006. We're skipping our 4th hour. We're writing our plan right now for tonight. It's gonna be cool.
Actually, tonight.
Brian and Tori were then arrested and charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. At the trial, it came to light how the 2 boys were obsessed with the movie Scream and wanted to pretty much replicate the murders in the movie. And because of this, they became known as the Scream Killers. Ultimately, Brian and Tori were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole at just 17 years old. They're serving their sentence at the Idaho State Correctional Institution, which, creepy fact, that's actually right next to where Bryan Kohberger is being held. Years later, Brian was interviewed by Keith Morrison, and in that interview, he says he regrets killing Cassie every day of his life. And when asked why he did it, he said he felt like a nobody. He said he pretty much just wanted to do something big and bad to get attention. And he said that he always felt misunderstood. That is until he met Tori in the 11th grade. Since he and Tori are in the same prison, he said he sees him in passing pretty often, but they haven't spoken to each other since they were sentenced. What's super weird and kind of gross to me is that Tori's mom wrote this book called The Guilty Innocent. I haven't read it, but just from reading the the reviews, she pretty much just defends her son to the fullest and sticks up for him, and she kind of trash talks everyone else. It's probably just a way to deflect from what her son did, because I can't imagine raising a human being who grows up to do something like this. But writing a book in this tone really just rubs me the wrong way. Cassie's mom died in 2022 after battling cancer, which has left the family grieving all over again. I just pray that they can find healing through this horrible hand that they've been dealt. But every time I'm reminded of Cassie, my heart breaks. But it also scares me so bad to the point that I will get up out of bed to make sure all of my doors and windows are locked and that nobody's in my house.